Today, the AG said Ottawa could account for nearly $10 billion of that money, but it couldn't say what happened to more than $3 billion of it.
With public safety a top priority in Canada, from 2001 to 2009, the Liberals and then the Conservatives tightened borders, improved intelligence gathering, and stepped up screening practices. Canada has spent $13 billion over 8 years, but today the Auditor General said he can only account for 10.
However, it's important for there to be, a way for people to understand how this money was spent, and that summary reporting was not done.
Conservatives have actually lost track of, wait for it, $3.1 billion.
Today, the NDP accused the Conservatives of mismanagement.
Will the Prime Minister hold his Minister of Public Safety accountable for this $3 billion boondoggle?
The premise of that question is completely false. What it has to do is with the categorization and reporting of expenses between departments over the period 2001 to 2009. There's some lack of clarity. The Auditor General has made some suggestions on how we can be more clear in our tracking in the future.
And not just tracking how the money was spent. Ferguson says the government is not evaluating whether the multi-billion-dollar anti-terrorism initiative is even working.
To suggest that you just throw money without knowing if you've accomplished anything with something as necessary and as immediate as security, especially cybersecurity and indeed security in general when it comes to anti-terrorism, one would hope that you were getting a report back that the initiatives you undertook actually were happening and doing, the outcomes were exactly what you wanted them.
And Paul, for many Canadians, that's the bottom line. It isn't clear if Ottawa's policies are keeping them safer.
But it's not just anti-terrorism initiatives?
Yes, that's right, Paul. Ferguson says the government is spending tens of millions of dollars on employment insurance, foreign aid, even a diabetes awareness campaign. But because it isn't tracking outcomes, Ferguson says he has no idea just how effective those programs are.
And welcome back to the political portion of the program while we jump in on Stephen Harper's nightmare by pointing out science, facts, and incontrovertible opinion.
Maybe he shouldn't have been so strict with the CBC.
Maybe.
Because they seem to be pulling his underwear out and showing it to everybody.
I'm Darren Howard.
I'm Robert Nisbet.
And I'm Kendra Cooper.
Let's run a clip just to start the mocking off in the right way with Radio Free Canada.
CBC obtained through access to information copies of briefing notes sent to Minister Diane Finley, the Minister of Human Resources and Skills Development, from May of 2012, almost a year ago, that warn her clearly about abuses in the temporary foreign workers program. Specifically, the memo said, and let me read some to you. It says, evidence suggests in some instances, employers are hiring temporary foreign workers in the same occupation and the same location as Canadians who are collecting employment insurance regular benefits. So what did the minister do? According to her office, she said, all these were addressed last year by the federal government when they reformed the EI program, and this year with the changes to the temporary foreign workers program. So they say this is nothing more than a problem that we've dealt with. The opposition says this shows that the minister was warned of the problem, and they did nothing until the CBC uncovered this story about RBC and the problems with temporary foreign workers. She knew about it, she didn't do it. Finally, I asked if the minister had investigated these specific cases, the parliamentary secretary to the minister, and she did not give me a clear answer if these cases have been investigated. Evan Solomon, CBC News, Ottawa.
Wow, they really shouldn't have messed with the CBC.
They should have left their funding alone.
Yeah. I love coming to work because look at this. They're saying that these temporary foreign worker problem was dealt with when it wasn't. No. Is that what I got out of that?
That's what you got out of that.
Yeah.
Because they lied to the press.
Yes, indeed, and muscle scientist. Maclean's Magazine's got that article coming up, and what do you got? Okay, right now, one more. Let's do it.
Well, the police are cracking down on journalists.
Gee whiz.
Yeah.
Imagine that. The RCMP under control of the Conservatives. Let's get into it. You're dialed in. This is Radio Free Canada. Thanks for joining the winning team.
Montreal police use what is known as kettling practices.
essentially blocking off streets and cornering protesters for hours. As this is taking place, they also don't allow journalists to film the kettling and arrest. Even while protesters have complained, it's when police are brutalizing them the most. CUTV, which is a community television station with a mission to cover stories you don't see in mainstream media, marches with the protesters, broadcasting it live. William Ray works there and says while his crew is clearly displayed as journalists, they have been arrested numerous times and prevented from filming by riot police.
I filmed a young man of 20 years old who was shot right in the head from close range with what they call an Arwen gun, a plastic bullet gun. He spent 3 days in a coma. At the same protest, another girl lost 6 teeth and had her jaw broken by the same weapon, and another young man lost his eye.
And Press TV has not been exempt from these actions. When identifying myself as a member of the media, the police told me, quote, "I don't care who you are," and to move or be moved. My photographer then was grabbed by the neck. Critics say police here believe they are above the law. Montreal police say protesters have attacked them. William Ray says the truth is police are doing much of the attacking, and mainstream media is letting them get away with it. Critics say mainstream journalism corporations are being muzzled by the government. Ashante Hathaway, Press TV, Montreal.
And there's no question at all, after the G20 report and after the police brutality protest in Montreal, the police are way out of control.
And they're trying to keep that news being suppressed. They're trying to keep that news suppressed. They don't want journalists to report these issues.
I mean, did you hear that?
I mean, like, they're suppressing it because the reality is, you know, they're hurting people. And cops are saying, oh, we're being attacked. You have a shield. You have a helmet. You have a weapon. You know, you're breaking jaws.
Who comes dressed for the riot?
Yeah, the cops do. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're breaking people's jaws. Why isn't that in the news? They're not supposed to aim at your head, by the way, by law. Okay.
Well, don't you know it's those freeloading French Canadians, so we don't care about that.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
We'll ask Daleen about that one. It just amazes me. But the police have caused major problems in Egypt. They're the ones who caused the riots to break out in 2011. In Tunisia, exactly the same thing. This month in South Africa, the police killing a guy caused that government to be overthrown. And that's not being covered in major news.
Wow.
They chained a guy to a truck. They dragged him right through the streets, the police. And guess what the response from the community was?
A little bit anger?
Just a bit. That they're throwing these guys in jail. They're facing execution. And the community said, by the way, we want to start voting for our cops.
Yeah, good idea.
I mean,
what
a response that is. We should be voting for the cops. We should be voting and then hold them accountable.
Yeah, that's
and maybe we should be voting for our judiciary as well.
Ah, there's an idea. What do you got for me, brother?
Well, you know, we've been making some funding cuts to our budget.
Oh, man. Okay.
And Chris Hadfield's been in the news just a little bit.
Okay, let's check this out. Check it out.
There's never been an astronaut quite like Chris Hadfield. The 53-year-old Canadian has wowed the world from orbit, just as he thrilled these Toronto students last week. His 750,000 Twitter followers saw spectacular photos of Earth, and he shared almost daily insights into zero-gravity life.
Chris, the next question's coming.
With Hadfield's mission ending, attention now turns to the next Canadian astronauts. 2 of them are in training right now. But there's a problem. The cost of a Russian rocket trip to the International Space Station is about 1/5 of Canada's entire space budget. There are no plans at all for the new astronauts to go aloft. Canada is proud of its role in space exploration, from its first satellite, Alouette, in 1962, to the Toronto-built robotic arm in the shuttle. But many here are wondering, with budget cuts and an apparent lack of political interest, does the country have a future in space? Canadian universities and businesses are moving ahead on their own. They're sending satellites up on Indian rockets and making lucrative technology deals with other countries' space programs. Chris Hadfield made space cool in Canada. The country's waiting to see if the government even tries to take advantage of that. Daniel Lack, Al Jazeera, Toronto.
However, we do realize that Stephen Harper has a new Earth creationist as his science minister, so I cannot see them
my
pursuing. It's not a joke.
I
It's
know it's
true.
not a joke.
And let's not forget that science and facts have not really been big on the conservatives' agenda.
Can we say oil and environmental practices?
Yeah.
I mean, Chris Hadfield, he got so much play, though, okay? It was like, oh, well, he's a big national hero now. For what? Floating weightless?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it gave the media something to focus its attention on rather than real problems that are occurring in the world.
Let's see now.
He plays guitar in space.
Yeah, come on. That's something, right?
He's kind of a rock star.
Wow, he's almost as important as Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
No, I think he's just as important as Justin Bieber. I think they're equal.
Yeah.
Of course, 1 in 5 Canadian children is still going hungry. We still have 300,000 homeless, but there's a guy in space.
And, of course, we're cutting funding to any space exploration we may be doing in the future.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that just goes along with muscling scientists,
Okay, and then budget cuts. Okay, this is a perfect segue, right? Transition into how the Conservatives are going to be messing with us in the next election. You brought this.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me hang my head and, well, actually, it kind of gives me a smile.
Okay, let's continue grinning as we jump in on Stephen Harper's Nightmare.
A new report from Elections Canada has found a huge number of errors at polling stations during the last federal election. So many errors, in fact, it works out to about 500 questionable votes per riding. Hannah Thibodeau's on that story for us in Ottawa today.
This is the report. It was prepared by BC's former chief electoral officer for Elections Canada. And the review of the 2011 vote found possible irregularities in 165,000 votes right across the country. So as you mentioned, that would average about 500 per riding. The report calls them serious and systematic, mostly voters who showed up at the polls who, without being registered to vote or not having the proper identification to vote. So, as I mentioned, on average, 500 voters per riding, where election officials made mistakes when determining whether someone actually had or was eligible to vote in the 2011 election campaign. Now, the head of Elections Canada, Mark Moran, says he accepts the findings in this report and also had said in the past that he wants to see an overhaul of voting in the next election campaign.
Concerning information. Thanks very much, Hannah. Hannah Thibodeau from Ottawa. Now, one innovation Elections Canada was considering is online voting, but that plan has now been scrapped because of a lack of funding. The agency wanted to experiment with an online pilot project in a federal by-election before the 2015 general vote. It's had to drop the plan because it took an 8% budget cut this year. The head of Elections Canada now says it will try to launch the project after the next federal election.
Yeah, we're sitting here mumbling in the background going, yeah, we've got a credible election process. Really, we do. 500 votes wrong per riding, okay, that are in error. That's the swing on any vote, on any riding.
And yeah, budget cuts. I mean, this is a democracy if we can afford it kind of country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
We can
Otherwise,
afford
it's just
30.
fascist. And it's just a game. It's just a show, you know?
And we can afford to lose $3.1 billion.
Lose it.
In anti-terrorist funding.
I always like saying it like this. $3,100 million.
Oh, that's a lot of money.
I notice if I lose $5, man.
Okay, they hold the Indian bands totally to task for messing up their accounting, and then when he loses $3.1 billion or spends $34 billion on warships we don't need, but nothing for Elections Canada.
Well, an 8% cut to Elections Canada because they may actually come up with some answers to why things went the way they did.
Exactly. They don't want to know. You know that there is no, with the federal government, with the robocalls that are involved with this, there is no credibility with this government. They have no mandate to rule. Just like Christy Clark in the BC election, when less than 50% of the people vote, you do not have a mandate.
No.
And if you want to know where the money goes, you better hire a parliamentary budget officer. Oh, wait, they fired his budget.
We're going to be following up on this one. I am Darren Howard.
I am Robert Nisbet.
And I'm Kendra Cooper.
We're so happy to be with you while we generally mock the process, but remind you that activism is winning, fascism is losing, and you're part of the winning team now. We're going to be right back with Radio Free Canada.